Hello, Catherine.
Hi, Elisa.
So good to see you and to welcome you on behalf of the South Florida Poetry Journal and the Miami Book Fair 2023. For our listeners, I'm Elisa Albo, an associate editor of the South Florida Poetry Journal and a professor of English at Broward College. It's a special privilege to speak with you today about your collection of poems, Accidental Garden. I love the title and the poem of the same name. This is a beautiful book with poems that, as our good friend and poet Emma Trellis says about it, seem the quotidian with the ethereal. For this poet, she adds, they are one and the same. And I see and hear and feel these poems bringing together earth and the body with heart and spirit and wisdom. So before we begin our chat, and reading. I'm going to have you read quite a few poems for us. I'm going to read your bio for our audience. Catherine Esposito Prescott is the author of Maria Sings and The Living Ruin. Her recent book, the poetry collection we'll talk about and hear from today, Accidental Garden, won Gunpowder Press's 2022 Barry Spacks Poetry Prize. Her poems appear in many journals and anthologies, including Eco-Theo Review, Green Mountains Review, Mezzo Camine, Northwest Review, Pleiades, Spillway, Valparaiso, Poetry Review, Verse Daily, West Trestle Review, and Grabbed Poets and Writers on Sexual Assault, Empowerment, and Healing, among others. Catherine is the co-founder of SWIM, which stands for Supporting Women Writers in Miami, and editor-in-chief of the online journal Swim Every Day. She earned her MFA in creative writing poetry from NYU and leads writing and yoga retreats and teaches vinyasa yoga and yoga philosophy in Miami, where she lives with her family. Again, welcome, Catherine.
Thanks so much, Elisa. Thank you for having me. It's such a
Of
treat to sit down with you and talk
course,
poetry.
absolutely. So in the Rhino interview you did earlier this year, you said that the book literally begins in the pandemic, but it's not a pandemic themed collection per se, and that the pandemic sometimes serves as a background or a jumping point to many other themes. And those are the ones that I would like to, really have you explore. You say that the poems explore parenting, travel, science, the natural world, and the human-made world, women, history, and mortality, which I think just covers so many areas that that we can relate to. And many of these poems, for me, seem to explore several of those themes within them. So there are many themes within one poem. One of them near the beginning of the collection that does so beautifully is the early years. And I thought maybe we would start with that, if you could please read it. And
Sure.
then I'm going to ask you to share a little of your writing process afterwards.
Oh, thank you for asking for that one. It's not one that I normally read.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I can't tell you why. I can't tell you why.
Okay.
But I guess in this one I was thinking of those years of raising kids and what it's like when they're small. And of course, when they're tiny, you generally don't have time to write or to do much for yourself, especially if there are multiple, especially if you are outnumbered, as
Mhm.
as I was beautifully and happily outnumbered by the children. But it's such a difficult time and it's such a magical time. And I raised my kids really before smartphones, so there's very little evidence that I think with the first child, his pictures were on film. And then by
Right.
the last child, she was a smartphone baby. So that's just what's referenced here. And I raised them in the most unlikely of places, South Beach. Um, to which even once the mayor said, I didn't realize we had so many kids here. So so the early years. I am a careless tourist here, walking on top of insects and carpets of microscopic creatures. I am heavy and uncoordinated. Every stomp of my sneaker mutilates a universe of microbes. Every step disperses seeds and energy. I don't know how to balance this account. I don't know how the world works, how I raised 3 children without a map, pre-smartphones, without a guidebook. Like the manatee with her calves, I called to them and they called back. How it was. I had no words when they had no language. I had no hands before they found theirs. We spent years at the beach wandering the shoreline, imprinting our feet into sand and watching the ocean lick them clean. We screamed into waves as if divining primal songs. The world was as we imagined it to be. Beach balls turned into planets. The sand glittered with shards of stars.
Hmm.
Mm. Yeah, it's just
Wow.
that kind of magical time with these little beings. And then I was thinking too about how every, in some wisdom traditions and some spiritual traditions, every living thing is said to have an atman, a soul. And just how as we go through life, we don't even know really what we're doing. We don't know which souls we are stepping on top of, which ones we are helping, which ones. And when you see just life as this fully alive on every level experience, it changes your orientation. Of course, happens in hindsight, not in the moment. I was
Um,
probably
mm,
running after children.
Absolutely. Exactly. It captures all of that, and I felt like it captured our own growth and education when we birth, humans, like we can't really know ourselves fully, or before that. And I think you capture both sides, as you said. There's so many things we don't really know what we're doing, but we're doing it, and we're doing our best, and and it's wonderful, and it's also sometimes difficult, and like you said, in hindsight, I have a cousin who has a baby now, and I just want to tell everyone who has young ones, just enjoy every single second, while they're young, because and you're going to do fine, just love them, and I think it just captures that so beautifully. So what in I mean, we can see what inspires us. They inspire us. All these things inspire us. But I guess I wanted to know a little bit more about your process. I remember, when my children were young, writing, and I would write about them sometimes. And I remember sitting with Jim Daniels once to show him some poems, and I said, I worry that these might be too sentimental or too this or too that.
Yeah.
And he said, no, he says, just because you're writing about children doesn't mean, that they're going to be sentimental.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, especially as women and intellectuals and poets, I think we're very self-conscious about putting the children into poems because for so many years it was just seen as maybe a taboo subject matter, or you're really on thin ice the minute you put a child into a poem. But the truth is that we write about our preoccupations, our obsessions. We write about what fills our heart, right? Or the deeper questions we have about existence. And if you're raising children, they are really, and I've been writing about this in newer work. They fill your viewfinder is the way I would say it. And a lot of this book came together. This manuscript came together when my oldest was leaving the house, and that's a time when you have time. You kind of
Mm.
get to the end of the race, and it's a time of deep reflection. At least it was for me, because it's like another birthing. That letting go.
Right, right. Yes, I actually was going to bring something of that up, and with another poem a little bit later. Um, exactly. Another poem that combines your themes, travel, history, family, is Palm Sunday.
Um,
The poem it's almost like a prayer for children, but then as they are want to do, they bring us back to the present, right? To the reality of everyday life. So I was going to ask you to read that one.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love to travel. We don't get to do it enough, and the pandemic kind of put a wrench in everyone's travel plans. But this was written after a trip to Italy with my family, and it just happened to be Palm Sunday. And of course, as poets, we're always piecing these things together, and we know that there are no accidents. So Palm Sunday, Rome, 2018. We walk along the Circus Maximus, the remains of a chariot racetrack. The stands, once marble, now grass, held tens of thousands. Today, our children run up the blank hills and around the track. We move as one unit, each in our own body. My husband harnessed to his thoughts, our daughter leaping into the air, one son kicking rocks from foot to foot, the other listening to scratchy music from thumb sized earbuds. It is easy for us to leave each other. We practice daily. Our procession across ancient stones is unsanctified. Palms wave overhead, pine trees stand stoic. Generals, priests, decorated men walk these roads millennia before us, their achievements etched in time worn stones. As usual, the women are missing, their stories uninscribed. So I try to infer how they lived from the everyday gods they worshipped, gods summoned like spices to a feast, a goddess of childbirth, a god who looked after the grain, a goddess who watched children, one who helped bread rise, one who accompanied children out of the house and oversaw their safe return. When my children leave home, I know I'll call upon the goddess of crossroads and magic, maybe the god of luck, and certainly the goddess who will accompany them on their travels. The descending sun paints the sky to a fresco. Our children chase and tag each other, a game that must predate this racetrack of marble turned ruins. Meeting at the oval's apogee, breathless, they ask us what's for dinner.
Exactly. That was the one right after that, um, that I felt, you has that part of the, it's this bittersweet imagination of, we raise them for others to go away to, but it's bittersweet for one. We're preparing them, but um, I love how it imagines them actually traveling away from us, as bittersweet as it is. I'm always brought back to Khalil Gibran, when he says, "Your children are not your children." I
Yeah, they don't
remember,
belong to you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they come through you, but not from you.
Mhm.
What is it? He says they are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember, reading that for the first time, I think in college when I first read him, and and not really getting it, not really understanding it, the way you do once you've had your own, of course. Um,
Well, it's such a difficult concept
yeah,
to take in and to fully understand because we become attached to whatever it is we do. And you become incredibly more so, exponentially more so when they're your children and you're responsible for their upbringing and their survival. So to think that they come through you, but they don't belong to you, that's a very enlightened that's a very enlightened point of view and very difficult to fully understand and fully accept and fully embody,
yes, yes,
even though we know it to be true.
right, right.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I also love the odes in the book, and a lot of them are called ode, which I love that. I love the lists that you do, the prose poems, their energy. They feel, I just went to a mini conference, the Sanibel Writers uh, conference, and these feel like prompt poems. That's how they would have us read poems, and that would inspire us. And so many of your poems felt that way for me. So I'd love for you to read the one on page 14, which concludes the first section of your book, and then follow it with the one that begins the next section.
Okay, great.
Yeah, those two O's, because they really, demonstrate this.
Oh yeah, happy to. And it's so funny. They're two that I don't read very often. Um,
Well,
yeah, much
good.
to I think the publisher's chagrin. I really just wanted to call them all ode.
Uh-huh.
I was just writing poems of gratitude over and over.
Well, that's exactly what they feel like. Yeah,
Yeah. And
very
and
much.
by titling them the same, for me anyway, as I was organizing them, they almost seem to speak to each other.
Mm-hmm,
I don't think we
mm-hmm.
can write enough of them. So,
Absolutely.
ode. The flock of wild lime green parrots, the clusia hedge with fat waxy leaves, the butterfly bush and porterweed, the milkweed which seems frail but hosts dozens of cocoons, the moon which has now set, the sun as it charges over the beach, turning the world on as it rises, using it instead of she, giving the feminine a break, the pen that works, the fingers that hold it, the teenage boys who grow their minds at school, the daughter with unicorn dreams, the husband also rising, the quiet morning, then the raucous afternoon, the evening with its petty arguments, the soccer, the climbing, the gymnastics, the beautiful bodies of children, the athletes who challenge gravity, who move beyond the mind's limitations, the mind that tries to sit still, the body that yokes, the genders, the skin colors, the dances, the songs, the languages in which the same thoughts are set to new music, the engineers and programmers who abet the artists, the eyes, of course, even as print gets smaller, the senses interpreting, the chance run ins, the surprise diagnoses, truths spoken, the healers who radiate compassion, the seekers who find new pathways to understanding, the concept of infinity, which I cannot grasp, the universe unaware of pushing outward. I imagine my mind without boundaries, my heart without boundaries. A wall becomes mirage, a line, something to jump over. Infinity on a macro scale and a micro scale, beyond quarks, beyond matter, as particles, as energy, as imperceptible waves. What if this folds, unfolds infinitely? What if the cells travel inward forever? The heart and its cosmos, the brain and its cosmos, keeping your world steady. When you pick up the children from school, cook some spaghetti, the children orbiting you, you orbiting them, the spaces between you full, collapsed, breathing in their wonder, you exhale yours.
Wow, so much gratitude. They're really lessons in gratitude.
Ode. For the many walls of this house where I write this, for the roof that holds the rain from disturbing my loves as they sleep, for the roof that captures the light of the nearest stars, for my pantry stocked with non-perishable storm-ready food, for the plants that scrub the air we breathe, inhaling what would harm us, exhaling what heals, for the phone that compensates for my busy middle-aged brain, for the computer that flickers with the light of many candles, works, writes, and searches the world outside these walls and just beyond the thrust of my voice, for the sun that lifts over the ocean every damn day, and for the ocean and its many colors, its mysteries, its teeming with life and its trying, for the ocean who carries our carbon like a mother taking on way more than her share, to the mountains of my dreams and to the cities of my youth, to the music of many languages charging the air, electrifying it with feeling after thought, to the eyes that can still see clearly, to this mind that holds onto spools of logic, makes a cat's cradle of them, then finds a page to hold it all, to the page which asks for nothing, to the pen that gives and gives, and to the hand which says yes and no, and sometimes, even when needling with pain, even when cursed with doubt, and continues to travel over this pale sea.
Hmm. It's so beautiful. I love how, it's gratitude for, like you say, things that bring us pain, that are difficult, like all of those things, also. It's not just all, the positive, the things that people will say, of course, I'm, grateful for this and for that, but I
Yeah.
love how you capture like all sides of the things that help us, be and grow as human beings.
Yeah, thanks, Elisa. That's it. I mean, we can all be grateful easily for the platter of cookies and the lucky lottery ticket, but life isn't like that. And trying to be grateful for even the most painful parts. That's the practice.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
practice. And that's the difficulty. And that's the squeeze. As Pema
yes,
Chodron says, that's the squeeze. And that's where growth happens.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, there are more odes. Maybe we'll read a couple more in a moment. Um, I wanted to move on to, I'm really moved by the poem Amnesty. Um, I write a lot about the violence and injustices happening to children and marginalized people in our country and beyond our country. And certainly we're in one of those places now. We always are, I think, but we really feel it right now, and it can be overwhelming. And I have a lot of poems that I haven't even sent out. I just sometimes I feel like they're too much. I'm like sort of too focused on what I'm trying, on what I'm feeling about them. But in this poem, I felt like the theme, it almost surprised me. It arises just kind of naturally and organically in the center of the poem. It doesn't seem to set out to be, about that. Um, it just like sort of takes us to this other place uh, and then brings us back also. Um, you know, why don't you go ahead and read it, and then
Mhm.
maybe we can talk a little bit
I
more
can talk
about
about it a little bit. Okay.
it. Yeah.
Amnesty. Hard rain batters the landscape. Palm tree fronds droop like wigs of feathered hair. The ficus hedge heaves as its drunk leaves spit excess water. Puddles kiss the chassis of my car as we break water, parting tiny sea after tiny sea. My kids shiver in the back seat, wet and cold. And because I am their mother, I give them my dry shirt, my dry pants, and I drive home in my underwear, exposing the sickle of the scar at the base of my throat and the pout of my middle aged belly. Right now, hundreds of mothers are crossing rain swallowed roads to reach invisible borders with their children, offering small sips of water, their dry socks, their dry shirts. And then what? How do we comfort when there's nothing left to give? The maw of my country closes on them, severing child from mother. Stopped at a red light, I lean my head on the steering wheel and find a way to pray.
Mm.
Yeah, I think, I think, of course, I mean, we're human and we can't help but be moved by stories of mothers crossing borders, trying to find a better life for their children, as we know we would do if we were in the same situation, but how to write about that. So there's the universality of motherhood, right? Or
Right.
just of being a human. Let's just say you don't even have to be a
Mm.
mom, just being a
Right.
human
Being a
and
human.
having an existence here. And
Mm.
what we do to make our lives more manageable, safer, and all of that stuff, and what we would do for our kids. So like you, I've written about about this in many different ways. just as like from like a third person perspective, like a reporter perspective. But I realized I couldn't quite get into it without risking appropriation. But I was like, how do I not identify, but how do I deeply empathize?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Right.
only way I could do it, the only way I stumbled upon it was by writing through my experience as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have this day, my son had a soccer tournament and it just rained upon, rain. And that's,
Mm-hmm.
as we never say in workshop, it was true. But like it happened, and it probably happened on more than one occasion, right? Because
Right. Right.
it's just part and parcel of what we do.
Yeah.
The kids
Yeah.
are cold, we give them something to make them warm, right? And if
Right.
they're towels, we give them something off of our bodies,
Right. Right.
because it's not all about us. It's rarely about us anymore.
Sure.
It's about their well-being and their safety. And then thinking of these parents doing the impossible with their children. And then what?
Absolutely.
And these are questions, I obviously don't have answers.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
but
I do.
yeah,
I,
the suffering, I agree with you. I think there's always this kind of suffering in the world, and there's only certain times where it's brought into focus in our immediate lives, right?
yeah,
And things have to come very close in order for us to see them.
it's true. The what was happening at the border, a couple of years ago, it was just making me crazy. Children being separated from their parents,
Horrific.
and it's just horrible. And I just heard, recently, on NPR, another story of just how many are still coming. It's still happening, but it hasn't been in our consciousness,
Yeah.
and a lot of the same policies are still in place, and it's just, and there are a lot of people coming here and going all over the country, really.
Mhm.
um, but we're not hearing about it. It's not front and center, like it was there for a little bit.
Yeah, and to be
Yeah.
honest, I mean, we everyone's going to go through their very hard times, and if it is front and center the whole time, it would be very difficult to go
Yeah.
grocery shopping.
No.
It would be very, you
I
know what I mean?
know.
Like, it's very
Absolutely.
difficult to go about your daily life.
Right.
If
Right.
you're so all the time, s- have your nerve centers exposed to the
Right.
real suffering, as I think we do, a lot, oftentimes as poets, but especially when we write, that's kind of
Yeah.
like the moment of grace where we can tap in and address and do what we can do, which is obviously we're not affecting policy, we're not
Right.
changing government structures, we're not giving food to people who need it, but this is how we can do something.
Right. Right. You reminded me of something, my dad used to say to me when I would talk to him about, feeling just terrible about things that were going on. And he would say, and he was a doctor and he saw a lot of terrible things, but he also was a healer. And but he would say, you can't complete, and a very empathetic, incredibly empathetic person, but he said you can't, live with that all the time, just like what you said, or you can't function. it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's just, it's just impossible, really. um but at the same time, I'm sometimes, it's just really hard to deal with, like, the heartlessness of others, and of policies, and of, ignoring, the things, and the people, so it's, yeah, it's a balancing act. Um but I agree that the writing is a place to, certainly to, to deal with that. um and I like how you conclude, the poem, even though all of this is happening, uh, and, your use of the word, the maw of my country closes on them. It's, it just captures it. But stopped at a red light, a red light being, you know, danger or attention. I lean my head on the steering wheel and find a way to pray, because you know, this is what the world is suffering and is in need of prayer, and we need
Yeah.
to
It's
do
so
something.
funny. I was just reading about the Buddhist practice of Tonglen, which is basically you inhale, like the world suffering, and you exhale peace. That's an
Mhm.
oversimplified version of it, but I think that's something that I think I've just done,
Mhm. Yes.
in those moments, and that finding a way to pray is like finding a way to send peace and healing, and
Mhm.
it's it's just energy. It's not,
Yeah.
a solution, but it's like one
Right.
small thing. Like, what's that one small thing we can do? What's that one small thing? It's like, do
Right.
we want to be warriors of peace? As Pema Chodron says, or warriors of aggression. Like, what do you want to be? And
Right.
that's in your that's in your dailiness. That's in your daily life.
Right.
That's not, set aside for a Sunday. We're not weekend warriors.
Right.
That's an everyday
Right.
practice. So that's where the
Right.
spirituality then comes into the writing. And it's
Mhm.
just, they're both just ways of getting through life.
Yes. Yes.
you know, we have to just get through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So why don't we go to another ode?
All right.
Yeah, one about the body.
Um,
Um, I was thinking the one that begins the next section, section 3.
yeah, this ode. This is a ghazal, which I love writing in different forms.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes, you do so beautifully.
oh, I just think it's fun. It's a way of playing.
Mhm.
Okay. So this poem came out of, Swim ran a special portfolio called Sing the Body, and we asked for poems about the body and in praise of the body. And I was like, well, you can ask for it, but why don't you try to write one yourself?
Yeah.
Because it's a very difficult thing to do. So this is what happened when I tried that exercise. Walt Whitman sang of the body. Let me sing of mine. A structure. It's hard for a woman to speak of her body. A wall, a fortress, a thing that exists, the main part where attention drifts, perceptible, a figure, a body. Is it more than the sum of its parts, more than organs, muscle, sinew, skin, and bones? What makes a body? A pelican rushed into the ocean, by which I mean crashed into water, a feathered ball, a balm to take a fish body. As a child in church, I walked with cupped palms, face lowered, down the church's aisle, its spine to receive and ingest Christ's body. When my children were newborns, we slept skin to skin, my torso, a generous hammock for their jaundiced bodies. Also, the unit of measurement women are held against, reduced to. Fact, most women I know have never felt at home in their bodies. What lasts? My body of work. What doesn't? My corporeal body. Ancient seers saw many bodies in everyone, each a sheath, each a covering, each a barrier between the body and its soul. How I knew I'd write poems, how I knew the boy I had just met would become my husband, all through the subtle logic of the body. When stricken, when struck, when suppressed by a viral load, when rife with a cancer, we say it failed. We blame the body. Denied its planetary status, did Pluto become less than celestial, less than an orbiting, spinning, luminous body? O shapeshifter, O life giver, O lungs, O heart, there are not enough words, not enough stars to illuminate this body.
Exactly. We're here. Wow. Wow. It's just I just feel like you cover so much um about the body. It's just really beautiful. It's not just an ode to the body, but it's like just to to life, to the life of the body, right? Um,
Um,
and beyond, and way beyond. And I love how it ends like like a true ode, oh, and the praise for that. And it's true, there are not enough words, but you capture so much here. Um, Really beautiful.
Oh, thanks, Elisa. Yeah, we run out of words, right?
But we just can, and as women, we just can connect so much to what you say, never being fully comfortable. It's like we're the what society. I remember in college, um, I I used to get women's magazines, and I made a conscious decision, like around age 19, to not look at another woman's magazine ever again. And I never bought another one
Oh,
ever.
good on you. Good on you.
I
Well,
know.
and imagine, and now, and we didn't have like Instagram and Facebook, and I
Yeah,
think,
yeah. And
as
I mean, part of me
women,
was like, how will I know what's in style? But I knew, well, I can always ask my sister. My sisters always knew what was up, what was going on. I could always look at her and ask her. But I felt it was too much pressure. It was, and I even had, some eating disorders in college, because it was just, there was always this awareness of the body, even from high school. I remember, I was always trying to lose the same 5 pounds, which I would give
oh,
anything to be at that weight now. But it
right.
was,
I mean, everyone was on Weight Watchers growing up, and
yeah, yeah,
and the thing is, the expectations for women have always been so realistic, right? So I wanted to bring that up because it's just ridiculous,
yeah,
and that, of course, is so disproportionate now with the proliferation of images that we're bombarded
right,
with.
right,
And now we know how those images are manipulated, then our thoughts about how ourselves are manipulated, and we're kind of caught in this machine where we intake so many subconscious messages and they become part of our programming. So how to undo that as women? And then when we realize that these bodies are really, even though they're denigrated, right, even though they're erased, they're pretty miraculous structures that we live in, and especially a woman's body. I mean, we can create life, like, come on.
right,
It doesn't get
exactly.
more sacred than that, but to do so, we shift, we
Mhm.
shape shift.
Right.
We, gain that 50 pounds, if you
Yeah,
ate vanilla milkshakes the way I did when I was pregnant. And then we lose it, we gain and we lose. And part of, I think, for me anyway, like coming to a more healthy place with the body, is just this deep appreciation for what it can do rather than for how it looks.
right,
And just that if it's healthy, that's everything.
exactly, exactly.
Beyond all of this surface stuff that
Right.
we spend too much of our brain power on. Imagine if we could transfer a lot of that brain power that we
Mhm.
spend on measuring ourselves up to whatever standards to actually affecting policy and making people's lives better and eliminating suffering. I feel like it's the way that women have been disempowered.
Yeah, yeah,
My hope for the next generations is that they are not so, it's almost like taking the talons off, like like we've been like culturally declawed, or
yeah,
drugged,
mhm,
and
yeah,
we just have to wake up. We just have to
yeah,
wake up and just honor what we have and really step, we always hear like step into your power, but really see like the beauty and the divinity
yeah,
in the female form. It's really remarkable. I mean, all forms, right? But
yeah.
of course, I'm in a female body, so that's my orientation.
Right, right, right. Right, absolutely. I think, a lot of, I have two young women, my daughters,
Mhm.
um, and I think, many of them, seeing them and their friends and my nieces, and they are sort of taking their power and realizing a lot of that. But then there are others that are being very affected, negatively by this onslaught of images, um, there's a lot of depression
Oh, and
and
eating
eating disorders.
disorders, unrealistic
Yeah,
expectations. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and it's difficult. It's really, really difficult for them, and it's hard to tell them, try not to, be on your devices so much, or to consume so much of that. It's a very tricky time.
right. And
Um,
it's hard to counteract those larger influences,
yes, yes,
right?
So we
Right.
try to do the things like a lot
Mhm.
of the things that you address here. We've traveled a lot with our children. You don't have Wi-Fi on a mountain,
Right.
and just try
Mhm.
to do those other things, the kinds of, um, it's funny, we've had a few family events, some happy, some not lately,
Mm.
um, uh, and my younger daughter, came up to me and not too long ago and said, it really feels something special to be with so much family, and to just experience them and not, I think
Yeah.
she's I think she feels isolated in this world. She was a pandemic high schooler, and it really had
Oh,
a
yeah.
big effect on her. Um, and I think she, even though it's hard
Mm.
sometimes to drag her to stuff, she's always so grateful
Yeah.
afterwards
I
for
think
that
if you can
connection.
tap into real community, I think
Yes,
community really does save us. And whether that's your family community or
yeah,
community of chosen family, I think to feel there's no substitute for walking into a room and feeling loved.
yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
But I
definitely.
agree. I think a lot of the children I had, my two boys were both in high school during the pandemic, and it did affect them socially.
Yes, yes,
And they were just so much better. It was like night and day when they could go back and be with their people in the same
right,
room, in the same space. We're
sure.
social creatures, we're social animals.
Hmm.
We read each other's
Absolutely.
energy. And as wonderful as these, virtual constructs are that we've come to adapt during, the pandemic times, they've become a crutch for too many, I think, and a
Yeah,
substitute for real in-person human interaction, which is what we need.
right,
I think
right.
it's deeply grounding.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, okay. So I thought I would have you read one more poem,
Okay.
which is the title poem that I
Um,
love, Accidental Garden.
I'm happy to read this poem. This is one that I usually read, um, because the structure of this poem is a poetic form that was created by our mutual friend Jen Karetnik. It's an
Mhm.
American sentence acrostic. So the American sentence was created by Allen Ginsberg, a 17 syllable sentence after the Japanese haiku, which I know isn't structurally bound to the syllabic count, but when we work with the form in English, we tend to adhere to it
Mhm.
somewhat. So it's a 17 syllable sentence that then runs down the left-hand margin of the page. So if we read the poem going down, you get like a little surprise treat. It's kind of like the joke inside the bazooka. You remember the bazooka bubble gum and it had like a little comic and the joke inside? It's kind of
Yes,
like the
yes.
or like the fortune inside the fortune cookie. How about that?
Mhm.
The little message. So accidental garden. Did we plant a butterfly garden? Or did monarchs stumble on the heirloom tomatoes that need pollen to transfer from pistil to stamen? Big job, poor job to pollinate plants without anthem, without a bang, without music and inaudible buzz. Flippant seeming flutterers have made this garden more than a green riot. I don't know an insect's intention, but today we have bulbs of chocolate striped tomatoes, fistfuls of cherry or grape tomatoes. I cannot remember which we planted. The forgotten are numerous, are prolific, names of species, of genera. Sages say that we all have consciousness, me as the one who writes this, but also a butterfly, a green parrot, an ant, a bee, our cat, and every tomato plant, who is divine. All of us scattered together on this earth like thrown dice, all accident, all planned, with little more to do than to touch one thing, transform another.
Wow. And we are transformed, Catherine, by these poems, by their
Um,
beauty, their wisdom, their light. I love how you bring we all have consciousness, and then you bring us to that surface of consciousness, me as the one who writes this. That's That's very cool there. Um, just beautiful. There
Oh,
are so many more we'd love to hear. So our readers must buy your book,
oh,
Accidental Garden. It is a gorgeous book.
you.
There are poems to be read again and again, and that must be read again and again. And I want to thank you so much for talking with me, and and our viewers and listeners for joining us at the Miami Book Fair.
Thank you
So
so much for having me, Lisa. It's been an absolute joy and a privilege to spend this hour with you.
thank you so much. All right. And everyone should join us at the book fair coming up very soon. Or
Yeah.
maybe you're already at it if you're listening to this. So enjoy. All right. Take
All
care.
right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.